For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile. And the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time. There's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello, America. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. Very happy to have you with me, and I have put off till the third hour the difficult topic of the day. The one we all dread. But we'll engage with it. I wrote my morning piece. You can text the word data to 33777 and get it if you want. And I've been thinking about this. Everybody, and I include myself in this, you should know. Everybody has at one time or another cried wolf when it comes to Donald Trump. You know, I was one of the people, as were pretty much everybody in 2016, convinced Trump couldn't beat Hillary Clinton, and he did. And so those of us who were wrong in 2016 ever since, despite getting 2018, 2020, 2022 right, it's like, well, what about 2016? You got it wrong. You cried wolf. So how do you persuade people that there is a wolf now when you've cried wolf in the past? And this goes for pretty much everybody. You know, to my knowledge, this is not to puff me up, I promise. It's just I've tried to find other people beyond myself who in 2016 got it wrong and said, okay, why did I get it wrong? What are the conclusions I draw from getting wrong? I'll tell you what my conclusions were from getting 2016 wrong. First, it's that Hillary Clinton was a uniquely and historically bad candidate that people really loathed. As much as people may not have liked Donald Trump, they really hated Hillary Clinton. And she ran a terrible, arrogant, out-of-touch campaign that viewed the world through the lens of Brooklyn beta males with bad barbecue, who did not think the people of Erie, Pennsylvania, or of Waukesha, Wisconsin, or of the Detroit suburbs were even worth bothering with. They were contemptible of hardworking, working-class Americans. It was reflected in Hillary Clinton's message about deplorables. She was a terrible candidate, and Donald Trump beat her. But it would be bad analysis to just stop there. One of the reasons Donald Trump came to prominence, in fact, probably the biggest reason Donald Trump came to prominence, is over the past 30 years, Americans across political parties, Democrat and Republican, have really embraced free trade. And it makes sense to embrace free trade on paper, and in the data, it shows it provides jobs, it lowers costs, it builds efficiencies, it makes it better for American consumers. Overall, free trade is a win for America. We get a lot of products at cheaper prices for consumers, but there is a problem. A lot of Americans, to this day, feel left behind by NAFTA. It doesn't really do a lot of good to have a cheap washing machine available in Ohio when the factory worker who used to make it can no longer afford it because he no longer has a job because his job went to Mexico. One's thoughts and prayers are of no use to the unemployed because of the free trade agreement. And telling an unemployed 50-year-old whose job went to Canada, Mexico, Taiwan, or China to learn to code sounds more like an act of war than an act of compassion. And Donald Trump tapped into that. The emotions of many Americans who felt not only left behind by all the free trade agreements and the different world trade agreements and free market issues, but also felt like they were having to subsidize The rich, the elite, the brainiacs, the coastal communities, and the Ivy League grads who were doing just fine had nothing in common now with the white working class around the country, held their noses up at them in disdain, and just told them, well, go learn to code, you can get a new job. Learn to install a solar panel. Trump gave voice to those people. He had their back, so they have his back. Not only that, his entry into the race showed the betrayals of the Republican Party, whose own leadership had for years been making promises to these people as they fell further and further behind. And then every single time those people voted for the Republicans, the Republican leaders broke those promises. When exactly is Obamacare getting repealed? And then when Donald Trump became a force to be reckoned with, the consultants who had helped George Bush and John McCain and Mitt Romney turned not just on Trump, but also on the party he ran and the people who were of that party. They were suddenly hicks and rubes and bigots. The Mitt Romney, the John McCain consultants were out there insulting the very people they had targeted candidates at. So it showed them to be deeply cynical, opportunistic, progressive hacks. They ran candidates who claimed to be pro-family, pro-traditional values, pro-traditional marriage, and then the candidates' campaign consultants turned out to be pro-gay marriage, pro-abortion, progressive hacks who were in it for the money. And when they couldn't get the money from the Republicans, went on MSNBC and got TV deals from the left, where they to this very day insult Trump supporters as racist bigots. Donald Trump exposed those people for the hacks they were and got a lot of loyalty from the base in return. That, my friends, is why Donald Trump won and why he has such a hold over so much of the Republican Party, because they feel he is one of the few Republicans to have kept promises and also exacted vengeance against the people who turned on the base of the GOP. Some of us learned our lesson, but many didn't. How do you get the American press? The American, I played you the audio before. It's the beginning of the end, turning point, tipping point. It is the end. Is today the day that Donald Trump goes to jail? It was Mike Flynn was going to have him carted off to jail. Ukraine was going to have him carted off to jail. Holding up that Bible across Lafayette Park was going to have him go off to jail. Have you heard about the P-tape? That was going to get him to jail. The Russian accusations. Everything was the beginning of the end of Donald Trump, except none of it has ended him. So how do you get a really self-assured, very arrogant political press that lacks a single thimbleful of humility or the capacity to do any bit of self-reflection to tell Trump voters this time is different? You've been telling these people this time was different for 6 years. You've been crying wolf since Donald Trump was on that escalator. And there has never been a wolf. Now, the wolves, not the chickens, are coming home to roost, and nobody believes you. Concurrent to all that, how do you tell Trump voters this time is different? They were told the Access Hollywood tape was going to be fatal, General Flynn, Ukraine, everything was going to be fatal. How do you explain to them that this time actually is different? This time the wolf is real. Because it's not the crime, it's the cover-up of the crime that gets you to do the time. There is a story in the New York Times today. It has been confirmed. Donald Trump's lawyers in 2022 offered to go to the Justice Department and say, look, we will give you every single document we have. Let's just make this go away. But instead of listening to his lawyers, Donald Trump apparently listened to a guy named Tom Fitton, who's the head of Judicial Watch, who's not a lawyer, who's never been to law school. And Tom Fitton told Trump what he wanted to hear, that it was perfectly legal for him to have the documents and there was no reason to surrender them and nothing would happen. Donald Trump's lawyers all told Donald Trump, give up all the documents. But he didn't want to hear it. And so he didn't hand them over. If, as it appears, Donald Trump did not give documents to a federal grand jury, the Presidential Records Act is a smokescreen. The Espionage Act is a smokescreen. If a grand jury says, give us all the documents with classification markings, and you hid the documents instead of handing them over, that's a crime for which you go to prison. But how do you tell Trump loyalists that that's the case and that this time is real and the wolf is at the door? Some candidate somewhere, we talked about this already, some candidate somewhere is focus grouping this. They got to be focus grouping it. How do I explain to people who love Donald Trump that I love him too, but he can't carry on, and for his own good and yours, you got to find somebody who's willing to pardon him because he's otherwise probably going to go to jail over this case? How do you do that? How do you talk to Trump voters in a way that makes them feel like they're not being disloyal, but actually working in his interest to jump ship? It's hard. They're deeply loyal to the man, and you can understand why people are loyal to Donald Trump when you understand that every Republican before him promised loyalty to them and betrayed them and told them learn to code when they were out of a job. So how do you talk to him without sounding like the boy who cried wolf, tell him this time is serious, and also we got a plan? And then lastly, how does one explain to the former president that this time is not like all those other times? Now you got to make some seriously wise decisions to stay out of prison. People have been crying wolf so much he's going to be hard-pressed to take advice. He took Tom Fitton's advice instead of legal advice from lawyers. Here's just a general rule of thumb. I don't know if y'all know this, but don't take plumbing advice from an electrician. Don't take electrician advice from a roofer. Don't take roofing advice from a plumber. Don't take medical advice from a lawyer. Don't take legal advice from a doctor. And don't, above all else, never take legal advice from someone who has never been to law school. The former president apparently took legal advice from someone who had never been to law school. How do you tell him that this time really is different? I don't know that you can. That's the problem. It's a problem for everybody involved in this. Everybody has cried wolf for so long. And here now, the wolves are not just present, but the wolves coming for Donald Trump are uniquely hungry for Donald Trump. This is going to be the problem over the next couple of months. How do you explain to his supporters that it really is different, this really is serious, it is not like those other things when we told you all those things were really different, really serious, that this is unique? How do you tell Donald Trump that this time is not like those times? This time is different. This time is unique. This time involves a federal prosecution with a tenacious prosecutor and your own lawyer's words against you. And how do you tell the media that you've told everybody every time was unique and every time they were going to come for him and every time was bad and every time he was coming to jail and every time it was the beginning of the end and this time is real and no one believes you because you have lacked any sort of humility to admit when you were wrong in the past? It's a very difficult situation. But the situation is this. Forget the Espionage Act and forget the Presidential Records Act if a grand jury subpoenaed documents that had not classified documents, but documents with classification markings, and Donald Trump instead hid them in a bathroom from his own lawyer and tried to hide them from the FBI. That is a criminal offense in and of itself for which people go to prison, which means this time there is a wolf, and you got to respect the wolf. Even if you don't believe the wolf is really a wolf, you need to at least consider maybe it is. Hi there, welcome. Phone number 877-973-7425. Al, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show. Al?
Yes.
Hi there, welcome.
Eric, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm from Cumming, Georgia.
Excellent.
And I got to say, and I'm a Republican, what you would call the 25% Trumper. But I just got to point out two things, please. Forget about obstruction of justice and the documents and the whole 9 yards, because none of that matters. Right now, we are in the fight of our country's life because of the weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't get fixed by the 2024 election, we're lost. There's nothing left for our country if we cannot clean house in the FBI, clean house in the Department of Justice, the Energy Department, and all the rest of the deep state. The only guy, in my view, that can do that with a vendetta, and I don't care that he has a vendetta, is Donald Trump. So, and I realize that you're a DeSantis fan.
Well, I'm not
That's
a DeSantis
fine.
guy. I'm just not a Trump guy.
Well, okay. Put it that way. And then, you know, you talk about the 2020 election and the 2022 election. I have a different viewpoint from my daughter, who is 40 years old, who has a ton of friends, same age, white college-educated female. 2022 to them was all about the abortion bill and not understanding what the Supreme Court said. They just thought, oops, Republicans, no abortions, can't vote for them. Anyway, let's get off of that and back to Trump and this whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So here's one thing though, Allie, is we can't actually. I mean, Biden is going to be president through 2024. The GOP only controls the House, so there's nothing you or I can really do to clean up the FBI or the DOJ or any other department right now. We're going to have to fight through it. And I just think when you got the former president didn't listen to his lawyers, didn't want to take any sort of behind the scenes settlement. Hid documents from his own lawyers and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, how does he fight through that? He's got to fight through probably 3 or 4 courtrooms and an election. All of his fundraising money is going to go to pay his lawyers. So how does he do it? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I know there are some Trump supporters say he uniquely can, but when you're fighting in court in New York, and that's a stupid case from Alvin Bragg, let's admit it, but you've also got a serious case in Miami with the federal prosecutor. You're going to have a serious case in Fulton County, Georgia. You're probably going to have another serious case in Washington, D.C. about January 6th. I mean, you got 4 lawsuits, or actually 4 criminal cases and an election. How do you do all of that? God bless him. Now, one of the boots on the ground groups out there trying to at least fight for reform and small government and even battling the FBI and the Department of Justice and the IRS and the like is Americans for Prosperity. They believe that if we reduce government, then the left cannot then use government on us because the powers they want to use are no longer there. It does us no good if we use the powers of government against the left and then the left turns around, wins an election, uses them against us. Let's just neutralize the power. Neither side gets to use them, and that benefits conservatives, free markets, and free people. And that's what Americans for Prosperity wants to do. So if you go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric, you can sign up, become one of their activists. They teach you how to be an activist. They give you the tools, the knowledge, the depth of information to fight for small government, for free markets, and free people. All you got to do is go to americansforprosperity.org/ERICK, americansforprosperity.org/Eric. Sign up today, become a member, join the fight for freedom. Hello there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson. I hope it is blue skies whenever you are, because it sure as heck is not where I am, and I'm missing them. I want to go to the phones. Ebony's been waiting very patiently. Welcome to the show, Ebony. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yes, I just wanted to say I agree with your statement that, people shouldn't be, the letter A holes.
Uh-huh.
But I think the problem is, and the reason why we're in this entire situation is because we don't fight. We don't fight. We don't fight back. And either we're too afraid to fight or we're not paying attention. And then we get caught in the rain, with our pants down without an umbrella. So when people do try to fight back, you have people telling them, oh, don't boycott, that'll hurt businesses. Or, oh, you shouldn't talk like that, carry Lake to the media, because that's not the Christian thing to do. And you sit there and you let people call you racist and all of that, and you don't fight back. That's why you continue to lose. And, when they tell you you're racist, you don't bring up the fact that, Biden tried to give out crack pipes during Black History Month, or the fact that the Democrats tried to pass vax mandates that fired all the workers, which included Black people. Y'all don't point these things out. Y'all just sit there and smile politely and let it fly. You don't point out the fact that, fool, if you allow Leroy into the sports, have you seen the WNBA and the racial makeup? That affects you, but y'all don't say anything. And so it's like, y'all don't fight, and that's why we're in this situation. Now, I do, again, agree that, you don't have to be a butt about it, but at the same time, we're in this situation because you don't stand up, and you didn't stand up.
So, I have complicated thoughts on this because I'm trying to resist just saying amen, preach the whole time you're talking. But also at the same time, I do think that particularly if you're a person of faith, you have to go about it differently. And you don't have to fight in the same way, because our fight, if you're a person of faith, Scripture tells you your fight is actually against the things you cannot see. And that's really what's going on. I mean, we're in a spiritual fight in the country. And we also, if you're a person of faith, got to remember that we have a band of angels that we cannot see that surrounds us, and we have the God of all creation fighting on our side. So, for example, when the Bible says turn the other cheek, it's not saying don't defend yourself. And people really misinterpret the whole turn the other cheek. What it is saying is there's a natural human right to retaliate. And what Jesus is telling his followers is, y'all don't retaliate, y'all let me retaliate for you. Now, what form does that take? That is the one I think that gives a lot of Christians trouble. But I got to tell you, I do think, like in my family, for example, there's a shop of not far from the office from which I am broadcasting right now. And it is fundamentally absolutely clear that the people who own this business are hostile to my values and very clearly use their profits to fund people who are hostile to my values. And I have no business, nor does my family have any business shopping there. Or like Target. You're going to fund or use a company that celebrates Satanism to design clothing for kids. Why am I giving you my business? I don't like, and part of it is because I'm very bad at it, doing some sort of organized boycotts. But I do think, let's just take another passage of Scripture. The manager who essentially knows he's going to lose his job, so he stacks the deck in favor of himself and earns himself points with everyone else. So when he's out of business, he can still make a livelihood. A lot of people look at that and say, "What's Jesus trying to tell you there?" And one of the lessons is discernment. You do have to be discerning, and there are a lot of people who just think, well, God's got this. Yes, God has this. God is in control. But if you throw yourself off a 30-story building, you're going to go splat. So, yes, Ebony, I mean, Christians do need to use a little exercise in discernment. And when they see people genuinely who hate their values advancing causes, what can a Christian do within their power to stand up and say this is wrong? And there are lawsuits that can be filed, among other things.
I agree with that. I mean, but you got to remember, too, I'm not a biblical scholar like you, but I do know that Jesus had different type of disciples. Last I checked, Peter cut off somebody's ear, and I'm not advocating for violence, but what I am saying is that we need all of these people. We need, nice guy Tim Scott, but we also need a Trump and DeSantis. We need Charlie Clerk going to these campuses and informing people, but we also need, the parents.
Yes.
Everybody fights in different ways, and my frustration is that, it's this tendency, I think, you just kind of fold. You don't, I guess that's why, like you always say, that's why Trump is in the position that he's in as being the front runner.
So there's this, there are the two sisters in the New Testament, Mary and Martha. Mary is very runs and does whatever she can do to help, and Martha's very manages the money and all the behind the scenes and very organized and disciplined. And this the picture you get of both of them. And I tell people all the time, in people of the faith, and even whether it's people in a movement, left or right, every side has both Marys and Marthas, and the entire tension between them is all the Marys think everyone should behave like us, and all the Marthas think everyone should behave like us. And really, you need both. You're right. You need the Tim Scotts to give an optimistic message. You need the DeSantises to throw the haymakers. You got to have all of them in a party. In an army, you've got the infantry, you've got the cavalry, you've got all these different components. You've even got the guys flying the helicopters. You got them all. We got to have them all. What I would say, though, is that when our side fights, and Ebony, thanks for the phone call. I'll let you go there. But when our side fights, you do need to exercise a level of discernment in, is this really a political fight or is it really something else? And the something else in this case, with a lot of what's happening in our culture today, is a spiritual battle. You may not believe, but I assure you the things you don't see do. And you can't engage in the same way. Y'all, there is a madness sweeping our society, and it is very clearly sweeping our society. The number of people, there was a story, I didn't get to it yesterday, for Pride Month. The mainline religious denominations queering Jesus is what it's called, essentially saying Jesus was a gay man. It is a major now theological point among the theological left. It's not grounded in anything other than their wish. You see this with the transgender movement, that you can't have conversion therapy of homosexuals, but you've got to convert your kid bodily if they're transgender. It's the deep contradictions. And really what we're seeing is, and this actually, so I've got this book I've written on this, and it will come out in a few months. And it is on how what we are watching in real time is a religion being created with doctrines and dogma, with orthodoxy, with apostates and heretics and heresies, with liturgies, with ecclesiology. We're seeing this happening in real time as you and I speak. They have the songs they sing. Lord knows John Lennon's Imagine is like the anthem of the woke left. They have their high priests who tend to be like woke college professors and Planned Parenthood abortionists and left-wing scientists. They have their ecclesiology. How do we protest? How do we organize a protest? How do we make our signs? Where do we make our signs? Where do we protest? When do we protest? They have their liturgies, their chants and songs that they sing at their protests. They have their orthodoxies and their dogmas, that you're born gay or straight, but you get to pick whether or not you're a boy or a girl. It's become dogma on the left. It is more spiritual than political, and you've got to fight it in a different way. It is 1,000% true that you as an American have certain rights. But if you are a person of faith, sometimes exercising those rights is not necessarily what you need to do. And Americans probably struggle with this more than any other group of people on planet Earth because of our constitutional order and our American dogma on who we are as a people. But sometimes you got to decide, what am I first, an American or a Christian? And that's going to govern your actions, and it can lead you in different directions. But it is complex. I will just say this, and I stand by it, and you can disagree with me if you want. Our ways aren't their ways. And even when you do decide to fight, if you are using the tactics of the left to fight the left, you become no better than the left. And the broad range of moderate independent people in this country who finally are the ones who are the most influential because they decide who wins and loses in politics, they're going to sit it out and reject you too. People are tired of the left-wing bullies. And if you're just a right-wing bully, you're going to get rejected as well. So you've got to decide for yourself how you're going to navigate that path and how you're going to fight. And it's one reason I also do think that Donald Trump has a fatal flaw in a general election candidacy against Joe Biden, because he does come across as a bully. And poll after poll after poll after poll after poll after poll after poll, whether you believe them or not, they've held up fairly well. And they all show Americans are as exhausted by his bullying as they are by the transgender community's bullying, as they are by the Black Lives Matter community bullying. And Joe Biden, whether you like it or not, is not perceived as a bully. He's perceived as a doddering old fool, and they would rather a doddering old fool than a bully. Yeah, it's everybody else on the left they think is bully. They don't see him doing it. I wish they did. I wish the scales would fall off their eyes because he's the chief bully of the left these days, but nobody gets it. Nobody sees it. Nobody processes it that way. And that gives him an advantage headed into 2024 that he fundamentally is perceived differently from Americans. He's also, let's just acknowledge, a little off his rocker, and why it doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies if you're on the left is something. Here's Jim Garrity talking about this.
If Joe Biden had a really high approval rating right now, and he looked really, and the economy's roaring, and everything's going great, and inflation isn't, nobody's worried about grocery prices. If everybody felt great, then maybe like, hey, hey, Republicans, we can't botch this. We really need to be.
But there's this perception that anybody can beat him.
Yeah, and I think it's conceivably that when you have an 80-year-old president who tends to mumble and meander and tell old stories about corn pop and stuff like that, and the economy's not great, you never know what's going to happen between now and 2024. Biden could get beaten by.
Yes, he could get beaten by anybody, including Trump. That was his point. He's absolutely right. That could happen. But you got to exercise some discernment, Republicans. And again, to my prior monologue here, when everybody's been crying wolf for so long, how do you convince people that this time really is different? I'm not sure. What I am sure of is if you go to visioncomputers.com or call them 404-COMPUTE, they can work with you. Now, I've talked about my kid, his gaming PC enough at home. Let me talk to you. If you're a small businessman or woman, if you need computers for your small shop, for your mid-size shop or your large shop, you can't afford IT, and you're finding yourself going to one of the big box tech stores and just buying off the shelf, don't do that. Don't go to one of those websites either where you supposedly get to customize stuff. Call Vision Computer. If you are in Salem, Oregon, or Orlando, Florida, or Hartford, Connecticut, you can still call them 404-COMPUTE. Tell them what you need, what your office does. They will build you custom PCs and ensure they're expandable and upgradable so they hold up long term. Give them your needs and your wants. They will tell you and build you what you need. They'll make it affordably for you, and then they'll service them. They will be your tech support. So when your employees need their email set up, they can call Vision Computers. Someone actually answers the phone, gets them set up. They can remote into your company and to your computer. They can fix your computers online so you don't have to ship your computer back to them. They do an incredible job. They do it at reasonably priced, and they take the IT burden and confusion off you as a small business owner who just wants computers that make your company make money. That's all you want. Rely on Vision Computers. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. If you call them, ask for the Eric Erickson special. You can't even see that on the website at visioncomputers.com, but if you call them at 404-COMPUTE, you can. Now, let's say you're a small business owner. You're thinking, by God, I wish I had used Vision Computer. Instead, I went to that best big box store and got my computers there. What do? You call Vision Computers yourself, 404-COMPUTE, and say, hey, I didn't buy my computers from you, but please, can you be my tech support? Please, please. For a small annual fee, they will be your tech support. And you, too, can have them remote in, fix email. They can have your employees, give them a number. They call. Someone will answer the phone and fix the computers so you don't have a lot of downtime. You get your return on investment with Vision Computers. 404-COMPUTE or 404 or visioncomputers.com. Call them, though. See how quickly they answer the phone. 404-COMPUTE. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson, and I am delighted to have you with me, and I got to play you this clip. I've been waiting all day to play you this clip.
Well, we're going to win, and we're going to help. We have plans to build a railroad from the Pacific all the way across the Indian Ocean. We have plans to build in Angola, one of the largest solar plants in the world. I can go on, but I'm not. I'm going off script. I'm going to get in trouble.
Darn right you're going to get. So we have plans. This is apparently really big news. We have plans to build a railroad across the Pacific all the way to the Indian Ocean. Really? But wait, there's more. It's no longer Build Back Better.
We've mobilized the world's leading emitters to help poor countries deal with the impacts of climate change. They called it the G7, the Build Back Biden, Build Back Better, and we realized that got confusing. So now we don't call it that. What we call it is, here's the bottom line. Look, we're the ones that caused the problem. The United States, we cleared all our land. We did all the things to make things more easy for us to make money.
What exactly? Build Back Biden needs to build a railroad across the Pacific and India. You know, I got a suggestion. Some Republican enterprising candidate in the general election take all of the insane, crazy, odd things Joe Biden has said and just string them together as a montage and run the ad. Do you really want 4 more years of this? I think it would be a compelling message. The insane, crazy things Joe Biden continues to say on the national stage. At some point, you just got to stop and remember that Joe Biden, they claim first had a speech impediment. He's not stuttering. He's just saying bat poop crazy things. That's not a speech impediment. That's dementia. I mean, come on, people. He's out there claiming that we're going to build a railroad across the Pacific to the Indian Ocean? Really? That's what Joe Biden wants you to believe? How exactly are we doing? And by the way, no one seems to even really know exactly what he's talking about. What case was he trying to make? I don't know. I don't know. But the president is yet again going off the rails. A man who by the afternoon always seems to stop making sense and has to be. I wonder if they've thought about like unplugging him, blowing him out and shaking him and then plugging him back in like a Nintendo cartridge back in the day or something. I guess I shouldn't say that. Sounds. I didn't mean it that way. You know what I mean? Like a Nintendo cartridge. It just, come on, something's gotta happen. Here's another one the other day.
Here's the other thing. I'm not sure. My guess is I'll get a question about, well, wait a minute, the American people aren't satisfied. Well, guess what? As I told you all before, most of this, what we've passed, doesn't kick in. It only kicks in over time.
Okay. Oh, my gosh. I mean, someone just take all of his flubs, put them in a montage and say, do you want 4 more years of this really?